Okay, we can start now. So shall we begin? Hare Krishna. Welcome to the 8th lecture in this series of lectures on 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Agyana Timiran Dasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. I would request Kumari Daya Mataji and Meenakshi Mataji to be having video on so I can see to you and I can speak looking at you. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the last time we spoke about Lord Parshuram, the most amazing chivalrous pastimes of Lord Parshuram, most encouraging, most confidence-giving pastimes, and how in the end when Lord Ramchandra gave him darshan, as per the providence, as per the verdict, he lost all his powers, which were taken away by Lord Ram, and that was the end of the function of incarnation of Lord Parshuram. And he went to Mahendra Parvat, and he's still meditating there on Mahendra Mountain. And he is one of the Chiranjeevi personality. He will live forever. And then we also uh, heard the story of Pururava, how Pururava lost in lusty activities and then finally realized and perfected his life. So we start today from Pururava's end of the story, and then he had a son called Ayu. Seventh generation from his son Ayu was Lord Dhanvantari. Very interesting. It is not given very elaborately in Bhagavatam, but we can understand that Lord Dhanvantari comes in Chandravamsha. And Lord Dhanvantari came with Amrut Kalasha, and he inaugurated medical science. And if you see, typically, Lord Dhanvantari has a kalash of Amrut in his house and leech in his other hand, because leech is one of the most prominent Ayurvedic medical treatment. Leech sucks all the impurities from the blood and makes the area or the organ free from intoxicants or free from toxic substances. So, Lord Dhanvantari incarnated and inaugurated medical science. That much description there in Bhagavatam. So we also will not go in details. Ayu had one son in from seventh generation is Dhanvantari, but I also had another son, and his name was Nahusha. He gave birth to six sons: Yati, Yayati, Samyati, Ayati, Viyati, and Kruti. Very rhymed names. And Yati, very important point. Yati refused to become king, although Nahusha gave him the kingdom, but he refused the kingdom, being very spiritually inclined, and he thought kingmanship makes one blind to spiritual realization. So he didn't want to get into all this kingdom business of opulence and property and controlling. So he refused. So Nahusha had molested Indra's wife, and he fell down from heaven and became a python on the earth by the curse of Agastya Muni. So Yayati had to become king. So Yayati became king, and Yayati was a very powerful king, very religious king. And this chapter goes on telling in detail about story of Yayati. Now, if we analyze ninth canto, you will come to know that all the ninth canto stories are about attraction of opposite sex, and then what happens to the personality who is addicted to opposite sex and the enjoyment given by opposite sex. So, the story begins like this. There was a king, Vrishaparva, simultaneously existing on earth, running his own kingdom. He had a daughter called Sharmishtha, who was a very innocent girl, but kind of hot-tempered girl, young girl, beautiful girl. One time, Shukracharya was the guru of King Vrishaparva, the Rajaguru of the kingdom of King Vrishaparva, and he had his daughter, Shukracharya, had daughter named Devyani. And Devyani and Sharmishtha, the daughter of Vrishaparva, was of equal age. And they had thousands of girlfriends, One time they were having pastimes, enjoyments, you can say picnic in one beautiful garden with thousands of girlfriends. They were walking and they saw a pond on the way, lotus pond filled with lotuses. And then they felt like taking bath and having water sports. So they removed all their clothes and all of them entered the water. And Devyani, Sharmishta, they were really enjoying their sports in water. And suddenly they saw Lord Shiva and Parvati in an airplane passing by in the skies. Now, in life, we always know that there are so many situations that happen unexpectedly. We do not expect them to happen, but they do happen. And they surprise us, they shock us sometimes, they amaze us, and many a times they cause some adverse effect. Like Nalakuber, Manigriva were intoxicated taking bath in Mandakini, and suddenly Narad Muni came there and everything was bad for them. They became trees unexpectedly. So, how do we handle unexpected situations? We can handle unexpected situations by good samskaras. Because good samskar will make our character, and our character will decide how do we respond to an unexpected bad or good situation. So this is an unexpected situation. Lord Shiva suddenly came there with his wife on the plane. So the girls, they got out of water immediately out of good samskar. They were not wearing any clothes inside the water. That means they were naked. So they didn't want to continue that. So they hurriedly, all the girls came out and they hurriedly wore their clothes to hide themselves from being exposed. And in the hurry, one thing happened. Sharmishta wore the clothes of Devyani by mistake. It was not intentional. It was simply in a hurry. Maybe it was similarly colored or she may not remember. But in the hurry, in anxiety, she wore the clothes of Devyani. Now the situation is like this. Sharmishta is the daughter of a Kshatriya and Devyani is the daughter of Brahmana, Shukracharya. And technically, socially, the Brahmanas are on a higher level and Kshatriyas are on a second level. Now, if you and me are in that situation, for example, suppose some of the ladies who are sitting there, they were in that situation. They say, so what? We are friends. We anyway wear clothes of each other out of friendship sometimes. We lend our clothes and we are so happy to do that. So actually, it was not a big thing at all. Absolutely not big thing at all. For time being, to save the situation from the vision of Shiva and Parvati, they could have simply said, okay, I have worn your clothes by mistake, you wear my clothes, we'll just get out of here and we'll then give back each other's clothes. And matter could have ended. But Parvati Shiva went away. But because of the pride of social status, the whole problem began there. What could have been easily given up as an insignificant thing was made into very significant thing because of false pride. So what did Devyani say? Devyani said many things. I am just quoting most important thing. She said, you are such a low level lady, O Sharmishta. Like a dog eats the ghee meant for fire sacrifice. You have worn my clothes. It is equal to a dog trying to lick the ghee. Like the Shudra takes charge of Vedic knowledge, you have tried to take charge of my clothes. Now, such a harsh and painful and cruel word she is using, simply out of social status. Where is the friendship here? They were a couple of minutes ago friends and they were playing so nicely, giving each other happiness. But simply by a stupid act of exchange of clothes, she is using such harsh words, simply for wearing clothes. She says that, we Brahmins are most important people in the whole creation. The demigods worship us. Because of our austerities, the world is created and maintained. Because of our mantras and our tapasya, the universe is created and maintained. And you people are not understanding our importance. Now, if I take things seriously, you will respond it seriously. If I take it not seriously, you also will not respond. But because Sharmishta was a Kshatrani, and what is important for Kshatriyas, even for women Kshatriyas, daughters of Kshatriyas, insult is worse than death. And this is a very severe insult. What Devyani is doing to Sharmishta, who is the daughter of a Kshatriya king. What she is saying, you wretched Brahmanas, you are always waiting in a queue at the doorstep of my father for receiving dakshina, to receive grains, to receive maintenance. You're always standing in queue in anticipation of receiving something tangible from the father of mine. You are like crows, who are always waiting for something that we throw, you want to eat. So she said dog and she said Shudra. So here the Sharmishta is saying that you are like crows. And this creates, I say something, you say something, and then you answer something and I answer something. It becomes small flame and big fire and big volcano and big things like that. So in a fury, see, Kshatriya ladies, so many ladies are there. Rukmini and Satyabhama, they used to go war with Krishna. They would go accompanying Krishna. Even our Dasharath's wife, Kaikeyi, was doing the Sarathi role for Dasharath Maharaj. And she saved his life in the middle of crisis in the warfare by putting her fingers in the spoke of the wheel of the chariot of Dasharath. Such chivalrous they are by the genes that they have and by the culture and the training that they receive in their family. So Sharmishta was like that. So what she did, she picked up Devyani and whatever clothes she was wearing, she ripped her clothes apart and naked Devyani she lifted and threw her in the well and she left from there. She just could not take the harsh words. So she retaliated by throwing her naked in the well. And everybody went away. And only Devyani, all the friends also have gone. So they could not dare to counteract the actions of the princess of the daughter of Vrishaparva. So now you can see alone, Devyani is in the well. Of course, she looks like she knew swimming, so she somehow floated, but she could not come out of the deep well, which has very low water level. And lo and behold, what the providence has in store. King Yayati, who has become king of late in Chandravamsha, is on hunting excursion and he feels thirsty. And in those days, the waters in the wells and the waterfalls and the ponds and the rivers were very, very pure. You can just drink off the water, off the flow. So he went to the well in expectation to drink water. When he bowed down to fetch water, he saw a beautiful girl but naked in the water, expecting the help. Naturally, she was in the water alone in a helpless condition. She was angry also, but she was now helpless more than angry. And she sees a beautiful, handsome King Yayati. And at first sight only they fall in love. But at this moment of time, what was required was saving. So, just to not further continue her embarrassment because she was naked, King Yayati throws his upper garment to her, long garment, and she covers herself. And then he jumps in the water and he brings her out, holding her hand, brings her out of water and saves her life. Now you see how the turn of event take place. With this situation, Devyani immediately responds, "You have held my hand and you have saved me. Now, because you have touched me and very kindly you have saved me by holding my hand, I consider myself married with you. I request you to officially marry me. And now I understand the will of the providence. I'm so beautiful girl that one time Brahaspati's son, Brahaspati is a great Brahmana guru of the demigods. His son Kacha, huh, he approached me for marrying and I somehow refused him. So he cursed me that time, being the son of Brahaspati as a Brahman, that you will not get a Brahmana husband befitting you. You will get married with somebody else than Brahmanas. And now that you have touched me and you are a Kshatriya, I understand that the will of providence is superior thing and that will prevail. So that Prabhupada explains about this kind of weddings, There's something called as Anulom wedding and Pratilom wedding. Anuloma wedding means a Brahmana gets married with a lower Varna girl. That means Brahmana will get married with Kshatriya girl or a Vaishya girl or Shudra girl. That is called Anuloma. That means husband of higher grade and wife of lower grade. And Pratiloma wedding means a husband of lower grade marries a girl of higher grade. That means a Vaishya can get married with a Kshatriya girl or a Shudra boy, sorry, Kshatriya girl will marry with Brahmana boy, that is fine. But Kshatriya boy marrying a Brahmana girl is Pratiloma wedding. And Pratiloma weddings are very much condemned in Vedic understanding. So this particular engagement that is taking place now by the will of the providence is Pratiloma wedding. But he says, but she says, I am already cursed, so I take it as a will of the Lord. And by the way, Devyani was so beautiful that Yayati also fell in love with her. As soon as this event gets over, Yayati goes away. Devyani gets very angry, remembers her anger with Sharmishta. She goes home and she complains to her father, Shukracharya, who is very powerful, mystically also, and also a Rajaguru of Vrishaparva. So she goes and instigates her father that how she was insulted, how she was disrobed, and how she was thrown in the well mercilessly by the daughter of the king Vrishaparva. So this is Shukracharya's position. Shukracharya ideally should not have got into these childish fights, but the two girls have, the king's daughter and his daughter. Usually it is explained that when we have many parents are there, many children are there, and they are all playing in garden and they fight with each other. It is advised that the parents should never take those fights seriously because they will spoil the relationship between the parents also. The parents should know that children will fight and we should not get into it very seriously. We should keep our friendship with each other and children will forget what yesterday's fight today and today they'll start playing. But if elders or the parents get into the fights of children, then they will not forget so easily. And the enmity between parents remain for a long time. Children will forget their enmity and fights at the very next moment. That is why Niti Shastra explains that mature parents should not get into childish pranks and childish fights done by the children. But still, Shukracharya first condemned his professional priesthood. Oh, I condemn my professional priesthood because I have to depend on this king. And then he says that I appreciate the farmers who pick up grains from the fields. Puncha Vritti, it is called as, to pick up grains from the field. It is independent earning of livelihood. And here we're chanting mantras and we are depending on the dakshina given by the host, especially the king. Nonetheless, because he was very attached to his daughter and she was demanding some action from him, helplessly he felt sad and he took sides of her daughter and he all the way started walking towards the king's palace. The king got the news, the Vrishaparva got the news that Shukracharya is coming with his angry daughter to maybe give curse to me. So he understood, if I don't act very proactively, I will be cursed. So he went out of the palace, stepped down all the steps, came on the main road before Shukracharya entered his palace. On the road itself, he offered Dandavat Pranam to Shukracharya. And there only, before anything was said, because he knew what happened, he just fell down and begged pardon and begged apologies. So Shukracharya, known for getting angry and giving curses, he was pacified. But still he said, I am attached to my daughter, so I cannot neglect her. You have to do something about this. So the matter was, he said, accept the desire of Devyani, whatever she says. I am helpless over here, but I can't neglect her. So what Devyani says, when a woman gets insulted, she can go to any extent to take the revenge. That's why a woman also and a man also should think twice before insulting a woman. It says that when woman is insulted, she becomes like a snake, very revengeful. So Devyani says, see, one harsh thing, to second harsh thing, to third harsh thing, to fourth permanent harsh thing. She says, whenever I will marry, Sharmishta should come with me as my dasi, as my maid servant, with all her thousands of friends to my husband's house. So Vrishabhanu said, Vrishaparva felt that if I disobey the command of Devyani, then I am sure to get curse of Shukracharya, my Rajaguru. And if I obey, then I will get blessings and I will have material gains. So king is always calculating from business point of view. So he agreed. And then because of that, then finally Devyani told her father that I met with a man who was very beautiful. He is King Yayati. He saved my life. He touched me. He lifted me. I was in his arms. So I have taken him as my husband. And please arrange for my marriage with him. So Shukracharya arranged her marriage with King Yayati. And very ceremoniously, Devyani got wedlocked in a Pratiloma wedding with King Yayati. And Sharmishta, with her thousands of friends, went to Devyani's house in the kingdom. Now, amazingly, life is always filled with thrilling atmosphere. When there was wedding taking place of Devyani and King Yayati, Shukracharya, the father-in-law of Yayati, only gave him one instruction. I know Sharmishta will be coming to you as Dasi with thousands of assistants. I order you never sleep with Sharmishta at any cost, in any situation. This is the only instruction I am giving you. Beware of this particular activity. So in the course of time of the wedding, Devyani got pregnant. And looking at Devyani becoming pregnant, her old friend, Sharmishta, who is now in servant form, but actually a Shatrani, she approached Yayati in private place and said, I also want to become a mother. Please impregnate me. Now, the Vedic science says that if a woman approaches a Kshatriya, not any ordinary person, if a woman approaches a Kshatriya and demands or requests or desires to become a mother or get impregnated, then the Vedic injunction says that the Kshatriya has to impregnate her and give her a son. So, although he was warned by Shukracharya not to do so, but he felt I should follow my dharma. I am a Kshatriya and she is Shatrani and she is approaching me with a desire of sex, having a desire to have a son. So he also impregnated her and she became pregnant. Very soon Devyani came to know that my Dasi, my old friend but now Dasi, has become pregnant because of my husband. Intolerable thing. She became furious. Yayati tried to explain her that this is Vedic injunction, this is what happened, but he could not pacify her. And she went to her father. And Yayati followed her. Please, please, don't do this. Please forgive me. But she was unable to tolerate this. Intolerable. And she went to her husband, went to her father, and complained that my husband did this, which I didn't want to happen. And Shukracharya, as he was attached to his daughter, ideally speaking, and in such juncture, when a daughter comes home to one's father after wedding, bringing complaints about her husband to the father, ideally speaking, a wise father of a married daughter should just advise her to get pacified and go back. It's a foolish thing for a married girl's father and mother to get into depths of the quarrels of husband and wife. It's not wise thing. The wise thing for a girl's father and mother to do when she comes home complaining about her husband or in-laws, just become cool and adjust. Don't get agitated. This is part of life. You have to adjust with your husband, your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, your brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and that's a part of the life. And you have to live like this happily and win the hearts of everybody and not get angry and not come home with complaint like this, because mother father getting involved in the in-laws affairs of married daughter creates disasters. The two families get at loggerheads. It's like when children fight, when the parents come into action, it creates disaster amongst the parents. Similarly, when a father of a married girl takes interest in the in-laws affairs, that creates disaster in the families. But Shukracharya was too attached, although he was knowledgeable Brahmana, he was too attached to his daughter. So he cursed his son-in-law Yayati. This is our impulsive action. This is not action done out of peaceful understanding of knowledge of scriptures. If one is knowledgeable but agitated by emotions, then the knowledge does not rescue him at difficult times. One has to practice equilibrium of mind by doing sadhana, and one should give up the impulsive nature, and that can be done only by strong sadhana and acquiring knowledge and keeping company of good devotees who are balanced in their behavior. But Shukracharya was known for this emotional outburst. It's not first time that we have come across this kind of situations. He was even agitated when Bali Maharaj was about to give everything to Baman Dev. That time also his impulsive nature was seen. And he lived for a long time, for many generations were going on in front of him. So he did what he should not have done. He cursed him to become impotent, to become invalid, and to become very old and lose his youth. Now see, what is a mistake in this? You should understand his daughter Devyani is a young girl. And he knew that she is very lusty. And he knew that she had a lot of lusty desires to get fulfilled from her husband. And foolishly, out of impulse, mental impulse, he cursed such a way that his daughter's husband will get old. Then where she will go to fulfill her desires? So after he cursed him to become invalid, to become old man, losing all his youth, he got a little bit, came back to senses and he understood, oh, my daughter is so lusty. Now where she will go? But what happened is that when Brahmana utters a curse, it has to happen. So whatever he said has to happen. Immediately, Yayati became old. Instantly. And Yayati was pleading to his father-in-law, I have still a lot of lust in me, which I need to fulfill. I need to satisfy your daughter also. Kindly do something. But it was too late. So Shukracharya gave a discounted situation. He said, well, I understand your difficulty. I understand that my daughter also is going to be dissatisfied with this. So one option is available. You can approach any of your sons to take up your old age, Jara, and accept their youth, because they were all young boys. So now see, this is the situation of father who is a lusty man. So he said, go to your son and exchange their youth. So Yayati and Devyani had two sons. One is Yadu and Turvasu. And from Sharmishta, Yayati begot three sons, Dhruyu, Anu and Puru. So this Yadu, the son of Yayati and Devyani, he very well knew that in his Vamsha, the supreme personality of Godhead is going to take birth in future. So he thought that if I do not fulfill my sensual desires, then I will be a hindrance in the process of the Supreme Lord appearing in my Vamsha. So I should not waste my time by giving my youth to my father and then remaining unhappy. And then that way I will be unhappy and dissatisfied and I will hinder the appearance of the Supreme Lord. So from the religious point of view, to help and assist the Lord to appear, he refused. So Prabhupada explains that Yadu's refusal to accept his father's old situation, Vardhakya, Jara, was a dharmic refusal. And then when he approached his other sons, and they also refused. So Prabhupada explains that this refusal was a dharmic refusal, a religious refusal, because they refused only on the basis of sense gratification. They thought if I give my youth to my father, then I will lose sense gratification. So not to lose sense gratification, they refused. So the other three sons, first is Yadu refused in a religious way, other three sons refused in a irreligious way. And the fifth son, the youngest of Sharmishta's son, Puru, he accepted the will of his father. And he gave three beautiful reasons which we should always meditate upon as human beings on earth. He said, one who accepts the desire of his father before even father tells him, that means in an anticipatory way, he is a first class son. He receives first class benefits of being the son. Second is, when he receives the instruction of father and he executes his father's desire, he is a second class best son. And one who accepts father's desire unwillingly and reluctantly is a third class son. And one who flatly refuses the desire of his father, he is no better than stool of his father. I will repeat for the benefit of everybody, for us to meditate upon. One who accepts the father's desires even before it is told by the father to the son, just by anticipating the mind of his father, he is a first class son. One who gets the instruction from his father and then executes it willingly, then he is a second class son. One who accepts father's desire unwillingly, he is a third class son. And one who flatly refuses the father's desire, that son is no better than the stool of his father. So he said, by father's mercy, why he said all these things? By father's mercy, one gets the human body, due to which one can become the associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one can repay the debt of parents. So he said, Father, I'm very sorry. I should have become the first class son. Before even you came to me, I should have come to you in an anticipatory way to fulfill your desire. But nonetheless, I am now rendered second class, but I don't want to become the stool of father. So I accept your desire. This brings a very important point. I had gone one time to Bangalore for some Shraddha ceremony of some elder person in the family. And that deceased person had gone many years back, and the son was now almost 80-year-old. And the son was still performing the Shraddha of his father. So I'm not 80 years old, I'm still a young man. So I asked that older person, uncle, how long one should perform the Shraddha ceremony for parents? So he answered very illuminating answer to me. Illuminating answer he gave me. He said that till one's last breath in this life, he should keep performing the Shraddha ceremony for his parents. Because the activity of giving birth to a son or a daughter by father impregnating mother and mother carrying the child for 9 months, and then mother giving birth, and then mother and father raising the children, giving them culture, giving them a dignified life. This work cannot be repaid. We are eternally indebted to our parents. And whatever we do, maybe we take care of parents nicely with love in the old age, or maybe we give them medicines, we really feed them. When they become invalid, we give them a hand and clean their stool and urine, and so many things we do. And we start thinking, I'm doing so much for my parents, so I must be getting relieved from the debt of my mother and father, matru and pitru runa. But the scriptures say that whatever one does, whatever extraordinary activities one does, one cannot get freed from the debt of mother and father. Matru pitru runa cannot be freed. Only one condition one can get freed from matru pitru runa is by becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. So when Bhagavatam says that one gets freed from the indebtedness of demigods, of the rishis, of the parents, of many things are explained there. Devarshi, Trinam, Truptam. That is only for pure devotees. So we sometimes think that, oh, I chant Hare Krishna, so I am freed from the debt of my father and mother. It is not so. It is only possible when we become pure devotee, completely pure devotee in love with the Lord, and renounce from the worldly activities. Then only one can consider oneself as relieved from the debt of mother and father. Otherwise, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was Supreme Personality of Godhead, he, as a son, went to Gaya and did his father's Shraddha. And he, after taking sannyas, also obeyed the instruction of his mother to stay near Mayapur in Jagannath Puri, so she can see him whenever she wants or wanted. Even Lord Ramchandra, Supreme Personality of Godhead, performed the Shraddha second time after Bharat performed it. He was in the forest, so when he came to know that his father is no more, and Bharat had done the Shraddha, but still, as an elder son, the Supreme Personality of Godhead exemplified by performing Shraddha of Dashrath Maharaj at Nasik at Ramkund. So this tells us that the debt that we have about our parents cannot be repaid. However, we do 64 rounds, we get initiated, we have a guru, we have sadhana, we have seva. One should never think that we can get freed from the debt of our father and mother. This is also part of Vaishnava culture, that becoming devotee and chanting Hare Krishna doesn't mean we give up all our responsibilities. We become careless. We become free from responsibilities. Rather, by becoming a devotee of Krishna and by taking initiation of the spiritual master, we should understand that we have to do our duties more nicely than before, more responsibly than before. Before, maybe I am not cultured well, but after becoming a devotee and learning Vaishnava etiquettes, we should become more strict in more detailed way. We should do our duties to our parents, our relatives, our children, our society, God brothers, God sisters, to Lord, to Rishis, to Vaishnavas, more nicely and more elaborately and more responsibly we should do all these duties that we are supposed to do. Then our devotional service, our bhakti will be appreciated by people around the world. If they see that a devotee's mother is admitted in the hospital and the devotee and his wife are all time in temple doing deity worship, book distribution, and so program, satsang, understanding that, oh, I am doing bhakti, then people will get discouraged that I don't want to become such a bhakta and I don't want to follow such a culture that your mother is suffering over in the hospital and the son and the son's wife are busy serving the Lord. In fact, even if you are serving the Lord and the devotees regularly as a duty, you should give up that duty for time being and serve your ailing mother and father. That will create a better impact of your example on common men and common women observing you, and more than influencing them in a favorable way, it is good for your consciousness and for spiritual growth. So I want to make this point very, very clear and very, very firmly. I want to request everybody that do not take our duties to our parents lightly. It is very much part of our bhakti, and the Lord will be very happy and pleased if He sees us doing our duties in a very understanding way, in a very empathically, and from the bottom of the heart. So what is Puru is saying here? That this very human body, which is the vehicle for understanding and realizing the Lord, this human body is a yantra, is a machine which helps us to realize the Lord and helps us to reach the Lord. Through this vehicle of human body, the soul finally can reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one can become the associate of Supreme Personality of Godhead through this human body, and this body is given by our parents to us. No one can repay the debt of parents. So I'm sorry, Father, I should have been first class, but I don't want to become the stool. So Guru accepted the old body, old age from his father, and gave his youth to his father, and he became old. And father enjoyed with his mother for many, many, many years. And it is said that great amount of material happiness he was trying to enjoy in the company of his dear wife by engaging her mind and words and body as well, various paraphernalia. Devayani always brought her husband as much happiness as possible, but in the course of time, King Yayati realized that there is no actual satisfaction in doing so. Although Devyani was a very obedient, chaste wife, and she was also eager to give pleasure to her husband with all the paraphernalia, no satisfaction was coming. No satisfaction was coming. But one thing is mentioned in Bhagavatam, very important. Why Yayati's story is in the Bhagavatam? Although externally King Yayati appeared to be very fond of material sexual enjoyment, internally he was a devotee of the Lord. He desired to become an eternal servant of the Lord, Narayan, and thus he worshipped the Lord without any material motive, along with his so-called enjoyment with his wife. And then one day he came to a realization that it is useless to go on trying to enjoy with wife with no satisfaction. So to get his wife to understand the same thing, what he has realized, he told the story of a he goat and she goat. It's a very famous story in Srimad Bhagavatam. He goat and she goat. And he said that one day I will tell you the story of she goat and she goat. One day she goat fell in the water, and he goat, very handsome, masculine and strong, saved her from water. And then the he goat and she goat enjoyed. And then one day she saw the he goat enjoying with many other beautiful she goats. So she got angry and she went to her father, went to her maintainer, who was a Brahmin. And Brahmin saw that his she goat is unhappy. So he cursed that he goat that you will become invalid, and he cut off his testicles. So he could not enjoy anymore. And then because the son-in-law, the he goat, needed the Brahman to save him, By his mystic power, the Brahman reinstated by plastic surgery his testicles again by mystic power. And thereafter, he goat continued to enjoy with the she goat for many years. Yet, even now, the he goat was never satisfied by enjoying she goat. So he said, I am that he goat. I'm trying to enjoy you. My dear wife, I'm exactly like the he goat, for I have been captivated by your beauty, and thus I have forgotten the real task of self realization. A lusty person cannot satisfy his mind, even if he possesses enough of everything that is desirable. Just as supplying heat to the fire cannot extinguish the fire, but it will burn the fire voraciously. Still, this is very important, please listen carefully. Still, one who actually wants to become happy must give up such unsatisfied desires, knowing them very well to be the cause of all tribulations, all suffering, and all frustrations. One should not allow himself to sit on the same seat with even his own mother, sister, and daughter. This famous instruction is given in Bhagavatam from the lotus mouth of King Yayati. Please listen carefully again. A man should not allow himself to sit on the same seat in seclusion with even his own mother, sister, or daughter, because the senses are very strong, that even though one may be very advanced in knowledge, he may become attracted by the desires of sex for mother, daughter, and sister also. Very illuminating, very startling, and very puzzling, amazing instruction. Because finally, at the bottom level, what remains is man and woman, male and female, Nar and Madi. So Prabhupada also was about almost 80 years. His sister Pishima was almost 75 plus. And one time she came to meet him, and so Brahmachari started going away. So Prabhupada said, you sit down here. So he thought that Prabhupada had some seva for me. And he kept on sitting there, and Prabhupada kept on talking to Pishima, many household matters here and there, kept discussing. And Pishima went and finally got up and went away. So the waiting Brahmachari asked Prabhupada, any seva? You didn't tell me any seva, I'm waiting for you. So Prabhupada said, your seva was to sit here when I am talking to my sister. He is 80, a sannyasi, realized soul. His sister is 75. But he said, your seva is to sit down here while I am with my sister alone. I am not supposed to be with my sister alone, even though I am an old man. That is a spiritual injunction. So Prabhupada followed this very strictly. And many of the mishaps in devotional service has happened by taking this injunction lightly, by taking this injunction for granted. We think that we are advanced now. I am a father's age, so I can always sit next to a girl who is young. But I am a fatherly age. She's like my granddaughter. We feel that many times. But even though we are grandfather's age, because we are in a male body, the sex desire cannot be taken for granted. Sex desire can erupt from within us in a most unexpected way, in a disastrous way, to ruin our spiritual life. So this injunction, whether we are grahasthas, brahmacharis, or sannyasis, we should always see that we should never remain alone with a woman in a room, even though she's our mother or sister or our daughter. Daughter who is grown up, of course, and a sister who is grown up, and mother who is older to us, but still. Because we cannot trust our senses. We can trust ourselves, but our senses are overpowering us. And when they will overpower us in an overwhelming way, we cannot predict. If you are really interested in making spiritual progress, this is a very important injunction. Next, he said, one who knows that material happiness, whether pious or impious, on earth, listen very carefully, one who knows that material happiness, there is something called as pious happiness, but in a legitimate way, you get happiness. Or sometimes in an illegitimate way, by doing wrong things, you get happiness. So whether pious or impious, the next one is whether on earth or in heaven. That means not only on earth, even in the higher planets. Then in this life or the next life, all this so-called pious or impious happiness is always temporary and is always useless. Thus, one should not be even be thought of. Thus should not be even thought of. That means the happiness we should not meditate upon. Or so what to speak of engaging in the sinful activities. That means what he is trying to say is that all kinds of happinesses in the material world, however nice they look or legitimate they look, they are always temporary. They never give us lasting happiness. So, a wise man who has knowledge should not indulge in attempting to get material happiness. One who wants to be a true knower of the self and the super self, one who is desiring to realize the supreme personality of Godhead, should never indulge into attempting to enjoy material happiness, whether pious or impious. Then next thing the King Yayati tells, all this, even though King Yayati had become accustomed to sense enjoyment, due to having indulged into it for so many years, what was the greatness of Yayati? He gave up all the material engagements in a moment. Prabhupada is beautifully writing over here that he was accustomed, he had even taken his son's youth to enjoy union with his wife. That means only physical happiness. But still, his realization was so strong that he gave up all these continuous engagements that he had with his wife. Instantly he gave up. Just as a bird flies away from the nest as soon as its wings are grown. This was possible for King Yayati because he completely surrendered himself at the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead, thus achieved his original positions as the Lord's associate. Extremely important point Srimad Bhagavatam is explaining here. We are all accustomed to sensual enjoyments. We want to eat nice food, we want to wear nice dresses, we want to keep our hair nicely, we want to keep our youth intact, trying to keep many things to keep ourselves young, and we want to have power, and we want to have influence, and we want to have so many subtle and gross material things. And then we understand one day it's all useless and we want to become devotee. But suppose we take shelter of any other process like karma kanda, like jnana kanda, or upasana kanda, or siddha kanda, achieving mystic powers. If we take shelter of any other so-called spiritual process and try to subdue our senses, no yoga, no pranayam, no dhyana dharana, no karma kanda, no acquiring knowledge, no siddhi processes can control our senses. Only surrender to Supreme Personality of Godhead through the agency of Guru can free us or release us from the bondage of material happiness. All of us are infected with this lust. Krishna says to Arjuna, lust is the most sinful, most powerful, most abominable, sinful enemy of the human being. And no one can ever think that I will control my sex desire. It is only Krishna can do that needful for you. We in our tiny power as a human being can never claim to control our sex desire. Krishna can control it for us, and Krishna can make us feel that we are not in it now by his mercy. So why King Yayati could instantly give up all these enormous involving activities of sexual enjoyment of many years? Because he surrendered himself to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is why he was able to be completely away from it. So message for us is, all of us are infected with sex desire, and we are convinced, if we are convinced that we should give it up, please surrender to Guru and Krishna. At the same time, you can do all the needful things, but don't think your yoga and your diet control and your physical distance from women will free you from sex desire. It will always burn in your heart, even though you are keeping away from women or men. But what will save us from this burning sex desire is our surrender, our genuine 100% surrender to Supreme Personality of Godhead through the agency of Guru. So looking at this determination and looking at the exemplary surrender of her husband, Devyani also gave up these sensual activities and followed the path of her husband. Now see the glory of Devyani here. They underwent many events in life of emotional ups and downs and revenges and anger and fury and harsh words and no, like ordinary people. But why their story is still mentioned over here? Because in the end of their life, even though they lived life like us, ordinary life, ordinary man, woman, fights, egos, social status, and no prestige and everything, they lived like us only. But why their story is mentioned here? Because they, King Yayati, could instantly give up this by surrendering to the Lord. Devyani, by exemplarily following her husband, could give up also. So if we are not very powerful spiritually, if we follow a person who is spiritually powerful, we also share his spiritual power. If we are not powerful, our Guru is extremely powerful, we surrender to him, his power is conferred upon us. And apparently we appear to be as powerful as Guru. It is said that if we remember our Guru, chant his name, remember his pastime, and meditate upon his activities regularly, we also get the qualities of Guru upon us. That's what scriptures say. And for women, if the husband is very spiritually advanced by the dint of his surrender to Guru and Krishna, then his acquired spiritual powers are conferred upon the wife because she is simply following the husband very sincerely. So Devyani got all the powers of her husband, all the power of her husband she received, and she also, thus by the mercy of King Yayati, Devyati not only was rescued from the well physically before, but she also achieved liberation from all the material bondage as well. Thus ends the chapter of King Yayati. Very, very beautiful and very, very instructive chapter. Lessons to learn are very, very, very powerful, and we can relate to this story because the most of the happenings in the story, events in the story, are our stories. We can relate to that. That we also go through like this. Even though we are devotees, we get angry, we get revengeful, we get lusty, we go up and down, wavy situation in spiritual life. But finally, what helps us is our decision of surrendering to our Guru Maharaj. Surrender means following the instruction of Guru Maharaj. It is also said that the first class disciple knows the will of the Lord, Guru Maharaj, without even being told. Like Hanumanji went to find out Sita, and without even being told by Lord Ram, he went and surveyed the kingdom, went and met Ravan, and went and threatened him, went and gave orders to Lord Ravan, King Ravan. So it is explained that Hanumanji was first class servant because he knew the mind of his master and did some things even without telling also. So first class disciple is that one who even without telling fulfills and executes the order of spiritual master. Second class disciple is also very good. Guru instructs him and then he follows the order of Guru Maharaj. Third one maybe may not like the order of Guru Maharaj. Oh, why is he telling me? I don't like to this. I don't want to do this, what Guru Maharaj is telling me. But he reluctantly does that. He is third class. And fourth class, one who disobeys the order of spiritual master, he is no better than a stool. And his spiritual life is not hindered, is finished, is destroyed. One who disobeys the order of spiritual master, his spiritual life is destroyed. Whatever he has earned also is destroyed. So, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chittete Koriya Aika, this is the topmost principle of a spiritual life. So this I was explaining to explain the meaning of surrender. Meaning of surrender means literally verbatim following the instruction of Guru Maharaj with full faith. That full obedience to the instruction of Guru Maharaj brings forth all these spiritual achievements that one needs to achieve. Whatever is desirable, achievable for a soul in connection with Supreme Personality of Godhead is 100% achieved without fail for that devotee who is an obedient servant of his spiritual master. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Now, if
Thank
there
you
are any
so
questions, please ask the questions.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. It was again, as usual, an enlightening class. Very amazing session. We are really grateful to you for you to take out time and give such, the pointers which you are taking out and explaining it to us, especially the last one of surrender and the instructions how we should be careful. Our senses can go in any direction. These are very important to us. But one question, if anybody no one has, does anybody have a question? Otherwise, I have one very, I have a question which is just
Maybe you can start
jumping to come out.
Inspired to ask.
Okay. So, Prabhuji, I have this question. Like you were mentioning how important Shraddh is for our parents, and we should. And I just wanted to know what are the consequences if we do not perform it?
Oh.
How important if we do not perform?
I am a priest, I am also a trained priest.
Yes, that's why I'm asking this
I
question.
do weddings and so many samskaras, and in my little study that I have done, I have come to an understanding and realization that if one does not do shraddha of deceased parents, then these parents who are now bereft of their body, they have lost their bodies, of course, and they've gone ahead. In Pitruloka, they give constant curses to those sons who do not do shraddha. And because of their constant cursing, because what happens is, shraddha means nourishing them in a spiritual way. We offer food here, but doesn't mean they come and eat the rice and everything. There are some demigods who are appointed to carry the essence of the food that we cook. And that nourishment in a subtle way is offered to those souls in Pitruloka. That means you cook here for your deceased parents or grandfathers or whatever. You actually offer rice and kheer and sabji and dal and everything. And you offer to Krishna and you offer to your ancestors who have gone. Then there are certain demigods who take that food in essence and nourish those souls for whom it is meant for. And when they don't get that, they get starved. And when you get starved, for example, what kind of mentality you get? You get angry, you get frustrated, you get hopeless, and you start cursing people, getting angry with people. So they know in Pitruloka when they are there that this son of mine who is on earth now is supposed to provide me that nourishment. And he is not providing them. They feel starved and they curse you, and you get something called as Pitru Dosh. And Pitru Dosh comes in the family, and in generation it follows. And now one person has died, and then the son who did not do Shraddha, he also dies, and his sons don't do the Shraddha for him, and they also die not doing Shraddha. So there are generations of people who are dissatisfied and frustrated in Pitruloka. So all these generations, they keep cursing the next generation people. So you get multiples of Pitrudosha. What is Pitrudosha? That means you suffer from diseases, you suffer from unsuccessful situations in your worldly activities, you get hindrances in getting marriage, you get hindrances in getting educated, all that you want to do in life, right? You want to get married, you want to earn money, you want to get your children married, you want to do so many worldly things that as part of your duty. In every single thing, one gets hindered. It's all a matter of faith. If you don't have faith, please go on suffering. Today, many of the young women are not begetting children, they're not getting pregnant because of this Pitru dosha. If you study this astrologically, you will come to know that majority of infertility cases are because of Pitru dosha. And then they are advised to do this Shanti and that Shanti and start doing Shraddhas and pacify those Pitras who are bothering you. Some of the ghostly bodies, they come and settle down in the womb of the lady only, preventing every pregnancy, every possible pregnancy. So there are lots of procedures are there. They are not directly religious, but they are something like parallel procedures. And one has to then succumb to that. So why get into all these parallel ritualistic methods which are not very simple to do? It's like suppose you prevent corona, it is better. And if you are careless and you don't prevent corona by doing natural rules and by washing hands and social distancing and wearing mask and taking precautions, then you undergo chest infections, breathlessness, inability to eat, vomiting, unconsciousness, so many things. And the treatment of those things is so heavy. Oxygenation, remdesivir, toxi, and so many things are there. Life is threatened. So what is important? Better keep social distancing, better wash hands, better wear mask, don't go in public, don't take risk. So you save a lot of trouble and save lot of remedies to stop that trouble also. See, the trouble is troublesome, even the remedies are troublesome. Please understand. People come out with permanently damaged lungs, which cannot be repaired. So doing Shraddha is like wearing mask, washing hands, and wearing social distancing. And not doing Shraddha means getting corona and getting horribly treated and suffering through treatment also. I think that can be very nicely understood. What is the meaning of Shraddha? Because Shraddha is quite subtle and corona is quite gross, but we can relate to it. So please never neglect your parents' Shraddha, however advanced, however so-called scientific all of us are. These things do work and affect your life, and you keep wondering why my wife is not conceiving, why I'm not getting a job, why my son is not getting educated, and so many hindrances and difficulties in life. So we must do our duties.
So, Prabhuji, there are some people who say that, we'll give charity, we will not do that ceremony itself.
It's like this. It's like this. Now I come to your house and I say, Mataji, I'm very thirsty. Give me a lot of water. And you give me chapati and sabji, huh? And you give me a good cloth, a good nice dupatta, because I like dupatta. So you have got some nice dupatta. Prabhuji, this is for you. You like to wear colorful kurta. So Prabhuji, this is a kurta for you. And I'm saying, please give me water. Mataji, I'm thirsty. Yes, I love dupatta also. I love nice kurta also. And I love that gift also. But right now I want water, Mataji. Please give me water. After you satisfy me with my thirst, I may correlate with your gifts. So similarly, this is like doing something else, which is good, but it is not going to directly help the person. He now needs your nourishment in the form of your pindadan. And you are giving charity to some old man, you are feeding them, you are doing this, you are doing that. It is not helping. You have to be intelligent enough to do what is needful. You cannot dress up a woman in a very beautiful way when she is hungry and thirsty. Yes, she likes to be dressed up nicely. But right now she's hungry and thirsty. You have to give her food and water. So like that, you have to give Pitaras what they want, not what you think they want and what you think is good for them. Right? When we serve, we have to see the welfare of the person whom we are serving, not what I feel as the welfare of that person. That is very important. We always do what we want to do. But we should do what we actually should do to please others whom we are trying to serve. So don't sidetrack, do the needful. Is there any question? I can't read very small letters from here. Your voice is, you're mute, Mataji.
There is a question, I'll just read it, Prabhuji. Just a minute. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. One can also argue that King Yayati may have enjoyed so much that he got bored of it, and that's why he gave it up. Also, how is it that when it appears that King Yayati is attached for material enjoyment, that he even took the youth of his son, is later on able to surrender to Lord?
So what is the question again?
One can also argue that King Yayati may have enjoyed so much that he got bored of it. That's why he gave it up.
Bhagavatam says is beyond argument. Bhagavatam says that he came to a realization that however long I will attempt to enjoy, it is not going to truly satisfy me. He came to a very wonderful, genuine spiritual realization. That's what Bhagavatam says, and I believe in Bhagavatam. What is the second part of the question?
I'll just read it. Also, how is it that when it appears that King Yayati is attached for material enjoyment, that he even took the youth of his son, is later on able to surrender to Lord? Like he initially behaved in a very...
So even that was explained. I will explain again. He was so indulging, so overwhelmingly attached that he even traded his son's youth without bothering about his son's enjoyment. But basically, King Yayati was a devotee of the Lord. And Neha Vikramanashvasti Pratyavayo na vidyate Swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. You may indulge into many simple activities, but basically, if we have done some spiritual activity, that will save us from greatest danger. So his lusty activities put him into so many so-called heinous activity. Taking the youth from your son to enjoy with wife, it is such a unjust activity. But because of his spiritual foundation, he came to a realization one day that this is ever dissatisfactory situation. And I forgot to mention that at that point of time, he gave his old youth back to his Puru son, and he again took up his old age. And Puru became a young man, and he uh, later on continued his life, and he surrendered to the Lord with his wife Devyani. So we should not rather speculate or argue for the sake of argument, but whatever Bhagavatam says, we should believe, and that will help us. Like suppose if I am a follower of spiritual path, and I come to a genuine realization one day. So as a practicing sincere devotee, I really expect that you should believe in me, that I am genuine in my feelings. I'm not trying to be bogus or trying to be duplicitous. If you have some faith in my sincerity in devotion, then even the realization which I'm expressing is also genuine. And we have to always give a benefit of doubt in a positive way to a sadhaka. So Yayati is that kind of a sadhaka. He was a very genuine person. He came to a, even though he was actually, it's mentioned in Bhagavatam, even though he was enjoying with his wife perpetually, simultaneously he was worshipping the Lord constantly. So that concurrent spiritual activity of worshipping the Lord helped him one day to get out of that entanglement. The message for us is that we may also have so many desires like he had, but do not give up your baseline spiritual activity. Keep continuing your association of sincere devotees, keep chanting, keep doing seva, and that formula, that format itself will relieve you one day of all your entanglements. That is, you are taking like in again Corona, you're taking adrak every day, you're taking haldi water every day, haldi milk every day, you are taking prash every day, you do yoga every day, and you take all the precautions to improve your immunity. So what will happen is, even though you are in the middle of Corona, you will not get Corona, because you have done all the activities simultaneously, which has prevented you all throughout the 8, 9, 10 months, and still you were not afflicted by that. Similarly, spiritual life is like taking all the precautions and performing devotional activities. And getting entanglement is like Corona. So we should keep doing with full faith what we are doing. And then we will be relieved of the so-called afflictions of Maya, which is all time around us. Like Corona is all time around us, but still we will be immune. And now the vaccine has come, so we should take the vaccine like we take the holy name of the Lord. This is like a vaccine which will prevent us from getting afflicted by Maya, which is all around us. Anybody else? In the audience?
I can unmute them if anybody has a question.
Okay, so I have a lecture immediately after this, so I will end and we will meet on 8th of February with the story of Ranti Dev and King Dushmanta, the birth of Shakuntala, birth of King Bharat, and I think we will try to complete our 9th canto in next. Let me try. I'm not very sure, but very, very interesting. It has been a very nice journey through 9th canto. So many instructive stories for common men and women like us. So thank you for giving the opportunity. All glories to Vaishnava Association. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Thank you very much. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you so much, Prabhuji, and thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
It's Monday at 6:15 p.m.
Yes.